How's it going, everybody? This is Cameron White with White Light Astrology, giving you guys your June 2019 horoscope for Gemini, Sun, and Rising. Happy kinda-ish birthday, Gemini. I consider it May since the Sun went into Gemini in May, but whatever. Thank you guys so much for being here and liking and sharing and commenting and subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys. We're starting June off with the new moon in Gemini, which is super exciting for you guys because this is happening in your first house. Now, a new moon is when you have both the luminaries, the sun and the moon, in the same sign, giving you a chance to kind of focus on one area, get level-headed about it, clean out the energy, maybe reset some new intentions. And of course, you guys should know all of the qualities of Gemini, the sign of Gemini, but Gemini, it's about communication, relating, connecting on that level. And when you have the new moon in Gemini, that's kind of like the theme of it, but this is happening in your first house of you, of your personality and your sense of self and what you look like and how you act. Now, this new moon happening in your first house is going to be a really good time to kind of just like look at yourself a little bit, kind of feel more of yourself, especially as it's your birthday, and you're just going to be feeling yourself. That's basically the best way to put it. And if you're looking to maybe see yourself through not a greater scope, but through different perspectives, or to be more open about the way that you look at yourself, this is also a really good time for that. Now, as we move forward on June 4th, that's when we're going to have Mercury enter Cancer. Now, Mercury, you guys are ruled by this planet, so this is a pretty big deal. Mercury, of course, the planet of communication, our mindset, how we think and how we vocalize our thoughts, how we speak. This is going into the sign of Cancer, which is all about trusting and emotion and empathy and relating, as well as it's about protecting and nurturing and being very maternal. Now, as Mercury goes into Cancer, it's going to be going into your second house. And the second house is all about money, finances, what you own and what you physically possess. With Mercury going into Cancer, this is where it's kind of focusing on the things that we need to focus on. What do we need to protect? What matters? What is of necessity? And what do we need to conserve? And where do we need to defend, almost in a sense? With this going into your second house, you're going to have a lot more of a picture, a lot better of a picture, and a lot more of a focus on what you're doing with your money. We talked about this last month with Mars going into Cancer, where you could be eating up a little bit more money, kind of focusing on like, hey, where's my money going? What do I need to focus on when it comes to, what you're doing with your finances, what you're doing with your physical possessions. Mercury is coming in through right now, kind of giving you a better mentality working through all of this stuff. Now, as we move forward on June 8th, that's when we're going to have Venus enter Gemini. And now Venus is the planet, of course, of love, relationships, value. She wants you to, indulge in the things that you like. She wants you to have relationships and great sex and to have fun. And Venus going into the sign of Gemini, where she's looking for mental stimulation. She's looking for something new. She's looking for, more things to connect yourself to and to enjoy and to express with. And this is happening in your first house, again, of yourself. So with it, your birthday, with Venus being in Gemini, you're going to feel very lovey-dovey for yourself and being able to be expressive of that. You may find, more attributes about yourself. You're just going to be feeling like really good about yourself in that sense. And with Venus being here, there's a lot of value in understanding yourself and understanding the many, facets that you have that make you you. However, as we move forward on June 12th, this is when we're going to have Mars oppose Saturn while Mars conjoins the North Node. And this is pretty important because as Mars conjoins the North Node, Mars is in Cancer. It's kind of like defending and protecting what's important and what's necessary for us. And as Mars is in your second house, it's kind of like, where's your money at? What do you need to own? What do you need to have? Like, what do you actually need to physically have? And as it's on top of the North Node, Rahu, the dragon's head, what we're hungry for, the direction that we're going in, it's kind of like, we've got to take action on this. We've got to go in this direction of like, hey, I need to have my needs met. And as this is opposing Saturn, while Saturn's retrograde in Capricorn on top of the South Node next to Pluto in your 8th house, that's pretty fucking rough. There's a lot of things that are out of your control when it comes to the limitations and the circumstances around this. And it's not about saying like you have complete control over this, but it's about taking what actions that you can that are going to better set yourself up for protecting yourself, defending yourself, and making sure you get what is of necessity for you. Now, as we move forward 3 days on June 15th, that's when we're going to have Mercury conjoin the North Node. And while Mercury's been in Cancer and it's focusing again on like what our needs are, what we need to protect, just like the Mars stuff was, Mercury going on top of the North Node after Mars is kind of like shoot first, ask questions later. And as you know, Mars goes over the North Node, you're initiating that. Mercury is kind of like giving us a better image and getting us a better visual of what that looks like. You know, this is the second house that we're talking about for you guys. So this is about your money. This is about physical possessions that you own. This is about your values. And Mercury going on top of the North Node is having a clear mentality and a clearer mindset about what that actually looks like. However, also on June 15th, we're going to be having the full moon in Sagittarius. And this is pretty positive, important, whatever you want to call it. Because as I said earlier, when you have a new moon, it's when you have both the luminaries in the same sign, giving you an opportunity to focus on one area. The full moon is when a whole axis is lit up and a dynamic is lit up. A full moon is when, you know, the moon is full, it's lighting up the dark, it's lighting up what we don't always see. And with the moon being in Sagittarius, where the sign Sagittarius is about, you know, optimism, learning, spirituality, adventure, fun stuff, this is happening in your 7th house of relationships. The 1st house is all about you. The opposite of that, the 7th house, is all about everyone else. This is relationships, both, you know, casual, formal, romantic. And this full moon's lighting this area up of like, hey, you know, here's all of the stuff that's going on for you. What does that mean in terms of relationships? What does that mean in terms of where are you going with relationships? And both, you know, formal, casual, professional, you know, romantic. And while Jupiter's been in your 7th house and it's been retrograde there, you're learning a lot, you're understanding a lot more about your beliefs around this area. This full moon is about really embracing how you feel about this whole area. And I think this is going to be really important as Mercury conjoins the North Node and there's a lot more visual clarity of what our needs are and where they need to be met. This full moon in Sagittarius is giving you guys an opportunity to really expand in that area and really write a bigger and a greater story for yourself as you move forward in the area of relationships. Now, as we do move forward, on June 21st, we're going to have the sun enter Cancer. This is when the sun, you know, the main luminary, it's bringing light, it's bringing attention and focus to a certain area. And that is your 2nd house of money, finances, physical possessions, values, etc. And as the sun goes through here, this is kind of, you know, just going along. It's kind of still continuing the story of Mercury and Mars going through Cancer through there. But what's also important is that on June 21st, Mercury is also going to enter shadow. It will be stationing retrograde later on in July in the early degrees of Leo, but it hits shadow right here on June 21st in Cancer. So I want you guys to pay attention what's going on June 21st with, you know, finances, money, what you own, because, you know, it's kind of like all the time you see this with Mercury retrograde. Whatever kind of happens with Mercury entering shadow, you're going to be coming back to, because that's where it's going to enter, that's where it's going to station direct at. So definitely pay attention to what's going on with, you know, finances and or whatever, wherever the moon is at in your chart, since Cancer rules the 2nd house for you guys, and that will be coming up later on. However, as we end the month, June 26th is when we're going to have Mercury enter Leo, where it will eventually station retrograde. Now, Mercury in Cancer is kind of like focusing and saying the things that we need to say. Mercury in Gemini is like saying whatever the fuck's on the top of our head at the moment. Cancer is like, you know, saying what we need to say. Mercury entering Leo is communicating and expressing what's on our hearts, what we're passionate about, and, you know, yelling it, like being very vocal about it, being very expressive of that. And as Mercury goes into Leo, it's going to be going into your 3rd house of communication, of expression, like your writing style, your speaking style. This is about, you know, the 3rd house kind of encompasses a lot of things. Also encompasses short distance travel, siblings, as well as neighbors, things that are within your close proximity. The 1st house is who you are, the 2nd house is what you have, and the 3rd house is how you use it. And so while Mercury goes into Leo, this is going to be a time of where you're kind of looking at all of these things and going, how can I better utilize myself in this more Mercury and Leo way, being more expressive, being more confident, being more proud in your expression. This is, you know, communicating with siblings, communicating with neighbors. Now, Mercury will station retrograde later here, and I am going to do a Mercury retrograde video, and we're going to talk a lot about this in the July horoscopes, but As Mercury goes into Leo and goes into your third house, this is when you're going to want to be paying attention to your communication. And, you know, Mercury retrograde's infamous for miscommunications, problem with technology. The third house can also be kind of, if you want, you can throw the technology as the third house, but as Mercury goes into Leo, this is going to be a time of being a little bit more expressive of that stuff. And as Mercury stations retrograde later on, that's when you'll start to see the problems, and we'll be talking about that later. And that's kind of what I got for you guys for June. The biggest thing with June is that it's a pretty fucking rough month. I mean, you guys kind of like luck out on it since you got so much going on in your first and seventh house. However, the Mars opposed Saturn conjoining the North Node is going to be very, very rough. And this month, focus on what your needs are. Focus on protecting that and focus on getting those needs met. This month isn't focused on, you know, whatever you want to do or whatever your soul wants to do. This month is focused on like getting that shit that needs to get done. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching and liking and sharing and commenting and subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys, and I'll be seeing you next month.